It is time for us to review the movie based on a video game, the big blockbuster that is the Monster Hunter movie. No, we're not talking about Monster Hunter Legends of the Guild here, by the way. We're talking about this movie right here. Let's go ahead and take a look at it. Hey everyone, Korda Pinoy X here once again, back with another Monster Hunter video, or at least I think this should be a Monster Hunter video. I really don't know what to make of this as of yet, because today we're gonna be taking a look at the big blockbuster that came out on cinemas last year, but no one could see it because of the pandemic, so I don't know why they released it on cinemas, but apparently they finally released it this year on digital so everyone can finally see it. This, of course, is Paul W.S. Anderson's Monster Hunter movie. We're gonna go ahead and check it out, and if you don't like spoilers, especially for this movie, I highly recommend you go check it out for yourself right now before continuing on this video. Past this point, I can only assume you've already seen the movie, or you don't care about the movie and you don't care about spoilers regarding this movie. So anyway, let's go ahead and take a look at the Monster Hunter movie. Now before we get started, I'm only going to be talking about the parts I like, the parts I dislike, and the parts that I find to be outright atrocious, because otherwise it's going to be very painful for me to go through this entire review of the Monster Hunter movie. Along with this, unfortunately due to copyright concerns, I won't be able to use any clips from the movie at this moment in time, so you're going to have to bear with me with using the collaboration in Monster Hunter World as the background kind of gameplay that you're going to be seeing here, rather than seeing actual clips from the movie. So I do apologize about that. Now first up, let's talk about the things I actually like about this movie, and one of them being the monsters' physical appearances. So the physical appearance of the monsters here I think are quite well presented. If you can recognize these monsters in the movie based on a video game, and let's say you see something along the lines of the spiders and you think, oh, it's Nursela, then yeah, I think they did a pretty good job at it. Now there are some inaccuracies with regards to the anatomy of the monsters. For example, the Nursela in this movie does not look like the Nursela that we have in the video games, at least to its full extent. But for the most part, if you can recognize them, then they should be alright. So you have the Black Diablos, you have the Rathalos, the Apsaros, the Nursela once again, you also have the Gormagala at the end of the movie, and you also have a Darren Moran skeleton at the Great Desert. So there's gonna be a moment in the movie at the very beginning where the soldiers are traveling across the desert and they end up at a giant skeleton structure, and then as it zooms out, it showcases that it's a skeleton of the Elder Dragon, Darren Moran. So those are the key things that I really enjoyed about this movie, the presentation of the monster's physical appearance. Alongside that, we also have the physical characteristics of some of the main characters here. So you have the field team leader, you have the handler, the serious handler, you got Aiden, the excitable A-lister here, and you also have the Admiral. Now the Admiral looks a little bit funny here because of his hair, but they kind of needed to do that in order to make sure that they portray a more realistic look to the character, because if it starts raining and you have a gigantic spiky haired man, it's gonna feel unrealistic. So I kind of see why they did that here. But otherwise, the casting of these characters, as well as their physical appearance and their costume, they're actually quite well done in this movie. I think they did an amazing job with regards to the aesthetics of the movie. Now, the soldiers part, I'll talk about that later, but I think Artemis's armor is actually quite alright here, so there you go, I will give them credit for that. And you also have the weapons. Now, I know there's a lot of jokes out there regarding the great sword, but I can see why they did it. I don't think anyone would be able to carry that great sword if someone was lugging it around at its original size, so just gonna say that right there. But otherwise, the weapons do look good as well. So the weapons, the monsters, the characters, all of their physical appearances are well presented in this movie. Same thing goes for the overworld, so the setting of the desert, where the tower is, as well as the forest with the Apsaros in it. So all of that physical presentation in the movie, I really enjoyed that because it lets me immerse in the visuals of Monster Hunter in a movie setting rather than a video game setting. So I'm actually alright with it. So those are the main positives that I can think of. Finally, we also have the Admiral's Palico, who is the muscular chef. Yes, the muscular chef was originally the Palico of the Admiral, so when they did say it was a Palico, that was actually quite accurate to a certain degree. Now, those physical appearances, they do feel good in the movie, but unfortunately, they're easily overshadowed by a number of negatives in this movie that I can easily think about right on the top of my head, which we'll now talk about. So right off the bat, the first thing I can think of that's a huge negative is that this is a Paul W.S. Anderson movie. That's right, it's gonna involve our real-life military. Why did that need to happen? I genuinely despise these kinds of premise in that they bring in our reality into a video game's reality. Just stick to the video game reality that you're presenting. If Detective Pikachu can do that, why couldn't Paul W.S. Anderson do it for this movie? I seriously don't get it. Artemis could have been a perfect character that's still presented in the old world or the new world, and that would have been fine. It didn't need to involve real-life military here. It didn't need that. And alongside this, we also have the misrepresentation of monster behavior. So the first thing I gotta talk about regarding monster behavior, Black Diablos. For those of us who have played video games, there is that obvious reason as to why the Black Diablos was extremely aggressive in this movie, and that is because the monster is in heat. Or possibly, for those of you that have read Monster Hunter World's official complete works, it is stated that there's a possibility that the monster is already pregnant. This means that the Black Diablos might be carrying eggs inside of it and it wants to lay it somewhere peaceful in order to make sure that no one either takes it or preys upon them, so it's protecting its territory. So those are the two possible reasons why the monster is attacking the ship and anyone in its sight. However, at the same time, in the movie, they never explain that. The monster is simply aggressive and attacks anything and everything on sight. That is it. There's no explanation behind it. Not only that, they actually tried to portray the Black Diablos as a carnivorous monster originally, and you can actually see some of these edits being very obvious in the movie. There was a moment at the beginning of the movie where the Black Diablos is attacking the ship, and you can see the Black Diablos literally opening its mouth, ready to catch one of the hunters falling, but they edited it so that the hunter does not fall in the mouth of the Diablos and instead falls on its horns. In other words, the hunter gets stabbed to death. That was their presentation that they edited because they were told that these monsters were herbivorous, they're not carnivorous. So yeah, that was a very obvious edit right there. So that's one monster that I think was heavily misrepresented in terms of its overall behavior. The next monster misrepresentation here is going to be on the Nursela. The Nursela have this hive underneath these caves, and the one thing that they presented here is that Nursela will take humans in order to lay their eggs in them and incubate those eggs inside humans, meaning that they don't actually prey on humans, they simply lay their eggs on them in order for these eggs to grow up. That is not how it worked in the video game. As far as I remember, in everything that I've read regarding Monster Hunter and the Nursela is that these creatures would prey upon these kinds of people that might not realize that there's a Nursela behind them. These are ambush predators. They will prey on just about anything that they can consume in order to make sure that they're satisfied. The worst thing that I've seen a Nursela do in terms of lore behind it is it actually tried to skin a Gypceros as it's consuming it, because a Nursela will use the hide of a Gypceros in order to be resistant to electric attacks. That is the reason why they would skin them. I have never seen in any lore books, as far as I'm aware, where a Nursela would actually lay eggs inside of a human. If anyone can find that for me in any lore books, whether that be English or Japanese, please let us know in the comments below, because this really irked me as one of the misrepresentations of these kinds of monsters. Now the next one is the Rathalos, and boy did they do our Rathalos wrong. First up, they say it's nearly impossible to kill. Like, I get it, it's meant to be the big bad of the movie, but I'm pretty sure I've captured or slain multiple types of Rathalos that I can do it with my eyes closed. That's how easily it is to kill a Rathalos. I'm sorry, but this movie is completely wrong with that regard. And I know Rathalos is meant to be the big bad of this movie. Now, if they said something along the lines that we are currently dealing with a Rathalos that we have not seen before because it's extra large and it possibly has more capabilities than the regular monster, then at that point, I would have accepted that it might be impossible to kill because it's a completely different breed of Rathalos. It's far stronger and far larger. But no, this is meant to be the regular Rathalos on this movie, and that's how they presented it. It's hard to kill, it's nearly impossible to kill. Alongside this, apparently the weakness of a Rathalos is just before they breathe fire, there is a moment of let's say, vulnerability, and you can use that in order to cause explosions internally to the monster, which is something I have never seen before, and they were just making it up as they go along in order to make this movie even worse than it already is for people who love Monster Hunter lore. So yeah, that was absolutely atrocious and I hated it. Finally, when we actually see this monster in action, we see these moments where it's just attacking anything and everything everywhere, and apparently, the victory against the monster was more important, even though about 50 million people have died in the process just so they can take down the one monster. So yeah, that was terrible. Why did they do that to begin with? Why couldn't they just stick to what we actually know about the monsters and stick to the world of Monster Hunter as well? So as you can see right there, those are the main negatives that I can think of, and they're very strong negatives regarding this movie. However, I do have a third segment here of the parts that I find to be absolutely atrocious in this movie. They're absolutely asinine. They make me want to go back in time and just cut the cord to stop the production of this movie as a whole and stop it from ever existing. That's how bad these parts are. And the first thing I gotta talk about, the weapon usage. Now the bow, they did well with that, but that's the only weapon that I can think of that they did well with. The great sword, the way they use it is so weird. One slash, you're dead on one monster. One slash, apparently you're not dead, but it takes like 5 million tries in order to take down one monster with it. Make your mind up, is it a one-hit KO thing or is it not? Next up, we have the dual blades. Originally, I defended the dual blade special effects in that they're meant to be a possible representation of the demon dance mode, for example. That's what I thought it was, but apparently it's meant to be the fire element because there was a moment where they're trying to stop the stampede and they're using fire to drive away monsters. So yes, it is a fire weapon and they're using a fire weapon against a fire monster. Finally, we have the switch axe, and the switch axe is the worst representation of the weapon I have ever seen. All Ron Perlman does with it is he swings it once and a gigantic shockwave apparently happens. Now mind you, I don't mind Ron Perlman using a switch axe, but if he used it properly like the way they did it in the video games, he would have seriously been an awesome character here. He would have represented the switch axe family right there and then, but no. They didn't make him do that. They made him do a one-swing shockwave kind of effect thing instead. It was absolutely terrible. I hated it. Now the next part that I find to be very atrocious in this movie is the presentation of the characters here. The first person is going to be the Admiral. He's way too serious in this movie. There's not a single moment where he's not looking grumpy. The only time I've actually seen him potentially smile is when he punches Mila Jovovich in the face, and that's probably Ron Perlman enjoying that moment more so than the character just going out in order to smile because they knocked down Artemis. I think that was Ron Perlman just enjoying that moment, really. Now, given the fact that Ron Perlman did portray the likes of Hellboy, I don't see why they couldn't use that kind of characteristic for the Admiral here, because Hellboy and the Admiral do have those moments where they're not very serious at all despite the situation, and they like to joke around at certain points, and they do have those moments where they really just enjoy themselves in the thrill of the adventure. And I think that kind of personality would have fit Ron Perlman's character of the Admiral here in the movie, but no, he's been told to portray the character as being very serious, very stoic, and it's completely different to what we see with the Admiral in the video game. So that part is already terrible for me. Ron Perlman was a great pick for the Admiral, but he's been told to portray him in a very different light. The next character that they really misrepresented in this movie is going to be the serious handler. They did her great injustice. In the movie, she is possibly one of the biggest, most obnoxious jerks out there just because of the way she treats Artemis, in that she actually sees her as some form of animal. The moment Artemis got knocked out by the Admiral and got put in a cage in chains, she starts whistling to her as if she was some form of caged animal there and then. And that is not a behavior that the serious handler will do in the video game at all. In fact, if anything, she would see Artemis as some form of person that really needs help. She's very caring like that. She would help anyone, she would take care of people, and she will do anything that she can in order to make sure that everyone is happy. That is her personality in the video games. In fact, the only time she's ever mean is with Aiden, but Aiden can be very annoying at times, and that's the kind of dynamic that they have with one another that makes them fit really well. She can handle Aiden being annoying at times, and Aiden can take take whatever insults she throws at him. So they have that sweet dynamic altogether. But in the movie, that's not presented. Therefore, the series handler is one of the biggest jerks in the movie. So that just ruined the entire characteristic of the series handler as a whole just by that portrayal. That is a great injustice to the character, and I really hope that they never touch Monster Hunter again because of this scene. Now finally, we have the Meowscular Chef. Now in the video games, the Meowscular Chef is gruff, is tough, he's got a deep voice and everything, and he will tell you, you either get gains by eating in the canteen or I will snap you like a twig and I will hunt down the monster for you. That way, you can go ahead and focus on eating and getting your gains. That is the kind of personality that I can see on the Meowscular Chef, despite the fact that he is a retired palico. However, in the movie, all they did was they copy and pasted the animation for the cooking, and they think that's more than enough to present the character, despite the fact that the voice of the character is wrong. He's blowing kisses towards humans, which is really weird here, and for the most part, he just doesn't have any kind of personality that I see from the regular Meowscular Chef. Now granted, I did like the part at the post-credit where he does get to fight with the Admiral, but hearing that high-pitched meowing sound really ticks me off with the Meowscular Chef in the movie in comparison to what we see in the video games. If I saw the Meowscular Chef fight in the video game and he's got that really gruff and tough tone to him, that would have been perfect, but no, none of that in the movie. So unfortunately, we got the kitty cat scrawny version of the Meowscular Chef here, despite the fact that he's meant to be muscular. And that's gonna be pretty much it for me for this video talking about the Monster Hunter movie, because if I talk any further about it, I am gonna lose my sanity. I would rather talk about the Equal Dragon weapon at this point and trigger a number of people about it rather than talk about Paul W.S. Anderson's poor attempt at representing Monster Hunter or any Capcom IP for that matter. Anyways, if you've seen the movie for yourself, what do you think about the Monster Hunter movie as a whole? Let us know in the comments below. Or if you haven't seen it, would you be willing to see Monster Hunter the movie in cinemas or digitally? Or would you rather avoid this kind of movie in order to make sure that you preserve your viewpoint of Monster Hunter as a whole? Let us know in the comments below your thoughts and opinions on the Monster Hunter movie, regardless if you've seen it or not. Anyways, that is gonna be pretty much it from me for this video. If you enjoyed these videos, please consider leaving a like on the video itself and subscribing to the channel, as well as hitting that bell icon so you can go ahead and catch up on any future movie reviews that I might be doing or playing any other games that I might be playing in future. Until then, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks ever so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Onward and upward.